Good morning or good afternoon or good evening, whatever time it is that you are watching this video. In 9.3, we are going to take parts of what we learned in 9.1 about graphing the inequalities, and then part of what we learned in 9.2 about absolute value equations. So as a reminder of how we do that, remember we had this and we would take and separate that out and make it equal to the positive value, and then we would make it equal to the negative value, and then we would solve for each. What we're going to do in 9.3 is going to be very similar. It's just that the difference is going to be that we are going to have an inequality. So we've got the absolute value of 8x plus 3, and it's greater than or equal to 11. And what we want to do is we want to rewrite this equal to the positive value. So notice everything's the same here. I just dropped the absolute value bars. And then the other is going to be to the negative 11. But notice what happens here. Up here it was equal, but this is an inequality. And if you remember from when you do inequalities, when you divide by that negative number, then the sign flips. It's going to flip here also. So we're going to be greater than the positive 11 that shows here, and then it will be less than or equal to the negative value. So that's just to get you started. Let's look at one and solve it all the way through. So we have the absolute value of x is less than or equal to 6. And so we're going to separate that out again into our 2. I'm going to go ahead and give myself some more space here. So I'm going to have x is less than or equal to 6, or x is greater than or equal to the negative value. Well, I don't have any solving here to do. It's pretty much done. If I were to write this together, I could put the x in the middle, and you want to keep the signs going the same way. So my positive number would be here, and then my negative number would be here. And notice the sign here is open to the x, so we're going to keep it open to the x. So this is a way that we can write this, and then when we go to graph it, remember for these we will need 3 numbers. We're going to need the numbers that we're graphing plus that 0 to give us, a reference point. And then remember that if it's equal, we will use brackets. So we're going to have a bracket here and a bracket here, and this is the part of the graph that this information covers. Then we want to write it in that interval notation, which remember, it's just a copy of what you have graphed. And so I have a bracket -6, comma 6, and a bracket. So there's that inequality statement, there's that graph, and then there's my interval notation. All 3 things that I need to be able to solve this problem. So we have our problem. The first thing we want to do is separate it into the 2. and then solve it. You know, we're going to add 7 to both sides, add 7 to both sides. Let's go ahead and write that inequality statement. We'll have x in the middle. Let's do the 11 because it's larger. You know, you're going to have your larger number on the right, your smaller number on the left. This sign is open to the 11. This sign is open to the x. So x falls between these two. And so in our graph, we want to show that. Here's my 0, my 3, my 11. And x is going to be between here. This time we do not have an equal sign, so we will use the parentheses. And it's going to go right on that graph, and then this is the information. Now in your homework and your online test, you will have multiple choice for these. And what I noticed when I looked at these is they don't have the numbers. So when you graph yours, you want to be very careful. You're going to have to pay attention to where that 0 is. Where is this in reference to the 0? And then we want to finish this out with interval notation. And so again, we are going to copy what we have written, what we have graphed. And there's our interval notation, which looks very much like an ordered pair. All right, so I'm going to scoot that up just a little, make sure everybody sees that. So this shouldn't be too difficult after doing 9-1 and 9-2. Just kind of taking both of those lessons and combining them. The absolute value of 2x minus 2 is less than a negative 4. Now you should remember here that the absolute value of any number becomes a positive number. So if it's equal or less than or equal to a negative number, then we have no further to go. We can't solve this. There is no solution for this problem. So that's going to be the easiest one on the homework. Now, at first you may think, well, no solution because it's equal to a negative number. But just like we did our absolute value equations, we had to isolate this part of it first before we could solve it. So after I move this 7 over, after I add 7 to both sides, then this is positive. And so we can continue with this one. We'll have the absolute value of x minus 9 is less than or equal to 4. We are adding that 7 to both sides. Now we can take and solve that. So I'm going to separate it out. And do the math. Add 9 to both sides. Add 9 to both sides. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and write my inequality statement with my x in the middle. 13 is the largest, it goes on the right. 5 smaller, goes on the left. Notice the sign, open to the 13. The sign here, open to the x. So there's my inequality statement. And then I want to do the graph. Again, go ahead and put 0 on there so that we have a good idea of our reference point. These are both less than or equal, and so we will use the brackets. Bracket here, bracket here. So all of that space there could be an answer to the problem that we started with. Then we want to write it in interval notation. Bracket 5, 13, bracket. Just a copy of what we have here. This is going to be a short lesson. I think there's only, gosh, I think there was 10 homework problems maybe. And it should be fairly easy, like I said earlier, because of your experience already with 9.1 and 9.2. Good luck. See you in the next video.